Imagine standing at the edge of a midnight forest, absolutely still, breath ghosting in the cold, and the softest crunch of dried leaves behind you reveals you're not alone. You feel it, the hairs stand on your neck, your heart picks up, your body primes for a threat. A primal moment, drenched in ancient instinct. You know that feeling, the tug beneath reason, beneath language, demanding attention. Now, imagine this isn't the wilderness. This is your relationship. Your daily life. Your thoughts, your cravings, your unexplained doubts and urges. What if I told you, even now, you are run by old, invisible animal instincts, 10 forces inherited, never negotiated, embedded in muscle memory, instincts that dictate who you trust, desire, reject, or even marry. And more dangerously, these forces act from the shadows. No manual discloses their existence. No wise elder points to their influence. Yet, you sense them. Each time temptation whispers. Each time you weigh loyalty against curiosity. Each time you wonder why you lash out, retreat, flirt, or crave recognition. These 10 instincts are the DNA of your emotions, the blueprint behind your habits, the reason you might sense divorce rising from different beds in the same house. Forget what you've read about logic and self-control. You swim in a neural ocean where psychology is shaped by biology, your thinking by old animal wisdom that predates civilization. You start frustrated, confused. Why are her choices erratic, her emotions a storm she never fully explains? Why do some women leave stable marriages, risking respect, security, everything for adrenaline or some forbidden connection? Beneath her polite smile, flickers a raw power, an unpredictable edge. And inside your own mind, you feel the same heat, the ache of rejection, the sting of feeling misunderstood, the gnawing terror of not being enough. These are not symptoms of sensitivity, but signals of ancient programming. You are wired to scan for betrayal. To notice changes in her voice, her gaze. To read between silences, sensing danger more than words reveal. And when she talks about emotional cheating, those dagger words, something primeval ignites. You crave trust but suspect sabotage. She wants understanding but fears being controlled. And both of you are dancers caught in old instincts that keep testing the bond, searching for loopholes in loyalty, seeking survival in seduction and secrecy. You ask, with burning curiosity, what are these instincts? How do they manifest in marriage, sex, attraction, and why do they push people to cheat, to crave emotional escape against their own values? Instinct 1, the urge for security. She, or you, will leave a warm body behind if another promises shelter from the psychological winter. Instinct 2, the predator's eye for hierarchy. Every conversation, every glance at another couple, is a ranking. Who's dominant? Who's bluffing? Who's truly safe to surrender to? Habits begin as survival strategies. Little rituals. Protecting one's territory. Hiding phone screens. Pretending indifference when the mind is a battlefield of jealousy and desire. Thinking, you tell yourself, is rational. But so much of this is automated, beneath awareness. And psychology, the so-called science of mind, is more like the study of ancient prey and predator games, imported into Netflix and date nights. Emotions come and go as signals, warnings, sometimes traps. The more you resist, the more they morph, owning you until you're merely reacting, not choosing. The pain is real. You remember the time she looked at someone else, just a moment too long. Or the late-night fights, tearing at the fabric of trust, words like daggers, sleeping on opposite sides of a cavernous bed. You sense, beyond reason, a shift. It's not just fear of cheating. It's the terror of emotional adultery, that she wants someone else to see her, understand her, complete her sentences. The urge for validation coiled in her DNA is also inside you. Both of you want to be chosen, needed, trusted. And yet, you betray yourself daily, acting out roles scripted by ancient biology. You think open communication will solve everything. But words dissipate like smoke if the animal in you isn't satisfied. You hunt for reassurance through questions, surveillance, bargains. She chases excitement, mystery, recognition, sometimes far from home. Street philosophy knows this. Every marriage, every union, is shadowed by the possibility of rupture. Instinct does not care about wedding rings. Instinct only cares about survival, the next safe shelter, the strongest ally, the best genetic bet. But this pain, this frustration, is also the birthplace of awareness. Here is the turning point. When you see that your hurt is not weakness, but an ancient warning. When you recognize the pattern, her withdrawal, your suspicion, the cycle of closeness and distance, you begin to ask, who is running the show? Is it you, or the ghost of a wolf who ran from danger, the bird who tested new branches, the ape who hoarded bananas, fearing hunger? Your confusion is the friction of old instincts clashing with your modern ideals. The greatest insult is not betrayal, but misunderstanding, the sense that your real motives are invisible, even to yourself. You stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m., rehearsing conversations, questioning reality. Confidence slips away. You feel split, divided between what you want and what you do. But as your gaze deepens, you begin to see her not as a threat, but as a fellow traveler through this wild emotional landscape. The journey is not toward domination, nor resignation, but toward clarity, seeing through animal eyes, yet growing wise enough to choose. Instinct 3, the allure of the forbidden. This one runs deeper than lust. It's an urge to touch the electrified fence, to cross lines not because you don't love, but because risk tastes sweeter than routine. You both sense it, the gravity in a stranger's glance, the static in a short, dangerous conversation. Jung whispered about the shadow self, the inner outlaw whose cravings illuminate what you most repress. Attraction is rarely just choice. It's old command circuits firing, hotwired to novelty, defiance, possibility. Call it infidelity, call it emotional cheating, call it whatever you like, a primal hunger for what's off-limits laughs at every label. You may think your relationships are safe, insulated by vows and passwords, but the subconscious stalks in daylight, shaping thoughts, gestures, habits. You recognize this when jealousies arise unbidden, not as evidence of immaturity, but as primal defense, the limbic brain watching for threat. The animal doesn't debate ethics or legal names. It only knows what it wants, and what it fears losing. Communication is your shield, but instinct is the hidden sword in the relationship arena. Instinct 4, the magnetism of the unknown. Your partner may crave certainty, but her nervous system is tuned to detect what's new, what's unpredictable, what stirs the sediment of her emotions. You see it in relationships that fail not from hatred, but from too much routine, death by familiarity. The same face, the same story, then gradually, the deadening of curiosity. Divorce isn't always the climax of destruction. Sometimes, it's the slow draining of mystery. Even the most loyal feel the pull. You sense it in late-night scrolling, wondering about the ex, the colleagues, the hundreds of invisible connections reflecting possibility back at her. And in yourself, the slow erosion of self-confidence when you realize someone else could bring her alive in ways you stopped trying to explore. The emotional arc bends toward regret, then acceptance, then, if you dare, reinvention of how you show up. The unknown is not always the enemy. Sometimes, it's the frontier you must cross to find each other again, to trust the wildness in both of you. Instinct 5, the drive for status. You think attraction is about chemistry, but every gesture, every tone, is unconsciously checking for rank. Who commands the room? Who adapts, who bends, who leads? Even in marriage, this hierarchy is never finished. She scans you, looking for evidence. Can you be relied upon? Do you challenge her, or merely accommodate? Do you bring certainty, or do you compete for it? These ancient status games are mutual, the DNA of confidence and desire. You bristle at this, maybe. Psychology calls it dominance and submission, but that's a hospital white label for a street fight between need and will. See it in her disappointment, her distance, her sudden attraction to someone bolder, or colder, or just less predictable. You feel the sting, unavoidable, ego deep, when her gaze flicks over your shoulder in a crowd, searching. Habits mutate, suddenly you're working late, signaling value, or shutting down, sabotaging, hoping absence proves your worth. Status is not about money or looks, it's the existential gamble of holding her respect. Instinct 6, the compulsion to communicate. This goes beyond words. She wants to be decoded, not managed. She craves deep attention, the kind felt as electric awareness, even in silence. You misinterpret her as needy or volatile, but she's testing for presence. Not gifts, not gestures, attention as rarest currency. The animal mind hunts for attunement, the sense another is tracking your moods, your pulse, the subtle swing in your voice. Miss it, and the story flips, safety becomes doubt, connection mutates to competition. Habits form, she retreats, invents distractions. You justify, ignore, or resent. The crisis is not lack of love, but lack of psychological oxygen. Your thinking says, she's too much, too intense, too dramatic. Your animal body knows, she's signaling, desperate to be felt, to matter in your nervous system, not just your reminders. Trust erodes when this is absent. Spouses become roommates. You both spiral into substitutes, social media, gossip, quiet infidelities of the mind. The tragedy is not cheating. The tragedy is growing invisible. Instinct 7, the fear of abandonment. You hear it hidden, panic compressed into questions about schedules, forgotten gestures, the long fade between texts. She may wear armor, but rejection leaves real bruises, the psyche responds with overdrive or withdrawal. The divorce papers on the kitchen table are an ancient alarm, echoing 1,000 generations of loss and risk. Her emotions erratic, her habits obsessive, these are survival strategies, not flaws. Psychology calls it attachment theory, but attachment is just the modern word for animal terror, losing the tribe, losing safety. You catch yourself mirroring this, defending against abandonment by building your own walls, staging small sabotages before she can leave you first. It's vulnerability squared, fear turned against itself until trust is a mirage. But in that raw crucible, you begin to see your animal self not as a betrayer, but as a warning system. Confidence grows from admitting this fear, not denying it. The transformation begins when you name the instinct, and refuse to be ruled by its default setting. Instinct 8, the power of withdrawal. When misunderstandings stack up, tiny insults, missed invitations, cold dinners, she doesn't always fight. Sometimes, she vanishes. She weaponizes absence, the slow retreat into silence. This isn't passive aggression. It's an ancient act, the wounded animal licking its wounds, recalibrating trust. You sense it, the phone unanswered, the bedroom colder, the air between you thick with secrets and what isn't said. You respond with frustration, then alarm, then resignation. Maybe you chase, maybe you shut down too. Every habit in this phase is survival, not solution. You tell yourself, it's just a phase. But inside, it's war, emotions on red alert, old instincts strategizing. You promise to communicate, to try vulnerability, but history whispers that the first to return risks exposure. So you circle each other, two predators wary in their pain, rehearsing scripts of indifference. In marriage, withdrawal is the ghost that chills every room, yet, ironically, the very space it creates might be the territory where real understanding begins. Withdrawal forces honesty. It strips away comfort, demanding you see the primal roots below your modern mask. Instinct 9, the urge to test boundaries. All relationships begin with rules, then mutate. She challenges the perimeter, not because she wants rupture, but because boundary testing is biological. Children do it before speech, partners do it through drama and secrets. You witness it in risky jokes, weird flirting, silent bets with fidelity. Every limit is probed. Will you forgive betrayal? Do you mean forever, or only until the discomfort becomes too sharp? Boundaries are moved, sometimes shattered, not by accident but by design. Instinct demands certainty. Where is the edge of loyalty, the true frontier of your love? You resent this at first, a constant stress test, a landscape mined with emotional risk. You want her to be content, compliant, predictable. The shadow truth: predictability breeds stagnation. Boundaries are there to be checked for weakness. Think of confidence as the capacity to absorb shock without crumbling. Relationships thrive when both partners survive the test, refusing collapse at the first breach. Street philosophy calls boundary testing love's way of measuring depth. Psychology calls it individuation, the forging of wholeness by friction. Instinct 10, the final gambit: freedom. Beneath every craving, every drama, every conflict, she desires autonomy. Not the cold independence of divorce, but the sovereign right to feel, react, choose without judgment. She is animal, she is mind, she is myth. Marriage confuses this, the promise of unity and the tension of self. You feel it too, moments when you want escape, when duty feels like a cage softly lined with compromise. Adultery, emotional cheating, secrecy, all symptoms of unaddressed hunger for space, to stretch beyond the tribal code. The primal scream is muted, almost polite, but present in every hesitation to share, every late-night fantasy of starting over. You can't kill this urge, you can only transform it by making the relationship the place where freedom is safe. Habits shift here: you stop policing each other's thoughts, start listening for the truth beneath defensiveness. Attraction recycles. Communication moves from surveillance to revelation. Confidence is born from risking the conversation no one wants to have. Freedom is not outside the relationship, it's the rare oxygen you both inhale when trust is the air. Now, put the pieces together. The emotional arc has bled through: frustration, misunderstanding, rejection, the gnawing bite of jealousy, lonely nights and tense silences. A landscape riddled with breakup threats, accusations, self-doubts. But each pain is a signal, a flare warning you of deeper truths. You are not weak for feeling these storms. You are the inheritor of instincts shaped by millions of years of survival, adaptation, risk and reward. Jung believed liberation lies not in repression, but in recognition, in meeting your shadow on its own terms, shaking hands with the wolf inside. The journey toward inner strength doesn't mean dominating the animal, or denying the hunger, or policing every emotional twitch. It means seeing the patterns, naming the instincts, choosing your response with clarity. When she lashes out, you read it, not as attack, but as fear, longing, test. When you withdraw, you notice, not as defeat, but as an ancient call to regroup, reevaluate, return stronger. Each disappointment is a pathway, not a dead end. Every rejection is a lesson, not a curse. Clarity creeps in with every honest admission. Your liberation, the root of transformation, is shadowed by pain, but surfaced through knowledge. The animal instincts are no longer saboteurs, they are guides. You start to move differently. You stop seeing her as adversary, start recognizing her as mirror, as fellow creature wrestling mythic forces. Confidence builds when you stop pretending you are above the dance, the habits, the wild patterns wired into muscle and memory. You speak differently. Your words carry weight, not bluff, but bone-deep authenticity. Marriage is reborn not through denial or discipline, but through radical truth. The emotional cheating becomes conversation, not covert operation. Adultery becomes a warning, not a terminal illness. Spouses are not jailers, but co-travelers. Trust becomes fierce, not fragile. You survive the tests by leaning into discomfort, knowing the instinct's purpose is not to destroy, but to evolve. You stop seeking safety through control, you invite uncertainty, knowing that true relationship is only possible when both people risk being fully seen, fully primal, fully awake. The pain loses its power. Clarity wins. Imagine now, the room is silent, two breathing bodies coiled with history. Every habit, every ritual of dinner, every pattern of conflict and closure, becomes charged with new significance. You no longer see arguments as failures, but as evidence that old instincts are alive, pulsing beneath civil words. The friction between you is evolution's workshop. Misunderstanding is not a sign of incompatibility, but a doorway. The emotions, anger, lust, disappointment, longing, are tools, raw pieces of truth the animal brain hands you, waiting to be shaped into meaning. You see the world with new eyes. The patterns that once drove you mad become the map to your liberation. When she's distant, you recognize the boundary testing, the fear of abandonment, the hunger for recognition. When you feel small, unchosen, threatened, you trace the lines back to a million ancestors who outlived predators, survived betrayal, who learned to trust cautiously. Thinking morphs from frantic logic to enchanted curiosity. You study her not to control, but to understand, knowing that every habit hides an old survival story. Pain mutates into fuel. The dark nights, the silent treatment, the questions about loyalty, each now sharpens you. Confidence emerges not from triumph, but from surviving rejection and walking through misunderstanding unmasked. You grow ferocious about trust, not naive, not rigid, but wise. You know the difference now, communication as a tactical way to hide, or as a daring reveal. You no longer cling to clean answers, but thrive in the messy terrain of attraction, desire, emotional gambling. You face the reality, marriage is not a fortress, but a wild perimeter, negotiated daily. Spouses fight, withdraw, return, forgive. Every break is a pulse in the bloodstream of relationship, every divorce threat a flare that burns away illusion and exposes the raw animal beneath your vows. Understanding evolves, you accept complexity, stop seeking absolute safety, and start building confidence that can endure challenge. Habits become conscious choices, emotions transform into honest currency. The space between you and her is no longer battleground, but sacred territory, alive, unstable, risk-filled, and thus, fully real. Emotional cheating, that silent epidemic, now reframed. You see it as a desperate search for validation, for presence, for the oxygen of being truly noticed. You recognize why you both hunt for satisfaction outside the relationship, the primal urge for novelty, affirmation, for boundaries that give way under the weight of curiosity. You stop shaming the instinct, you harness it. You turn toward her, not as judge, but as co-conspirator in evolved intimacy. Trust is no longer innocence, it's fierce, informed, watchful, a predator and a protector, balanced at the edge. You name the truth, love is not domestication. Love is wild allegiance, a learned commitment to face the animal together, not in opposition, but in union. You become fluent in the silent languages, subtle glances, micro-rejections, half-formed compliments, coded boundaries. Attraction rekindles, not in spite of friction, but because of it. You learn new habits, the art of non-reactive listening, the discipline of direct speaking, the confidence to risk exposure. Divorce loses its halo of finality, it becomes just another cave to explore, another myth to shed. Jung's warning resonates, to be whole, you must integrate the unconscious, make a treaty with your primal nature. Liberation is the arc, the reward for refusing to live as a hostage to what you fear or suppress. You and her are not just spouses, not just antagonists trapped in societal scripts. You are animals, philosophers, creators of new rituals. Marriage, attraction, trust, betrayal, these are not just words, but living dramas enacted by ancient drives. You step out of confusion, out of frustration, you enter awareness, then strength. A new confidence crystallizes, one that refuses cliché, that sees ruin and resurrection as two faces of honest love. Understanding is no longer static, but motion, a willingness to meet her, and your own instincts, again and again, without defense. Your thinking is recalibrated, your emotions trusted, your communication fearless. The journey has changed you. The shadow is not banished, it is honored. You move with clarity, every step echoing with the power that comes from knowing yourself, and knowing the animal beside you. Transformation is available only to those who dare confront what they fear in themselves, and in her. The call is not to sanitize, to erase, to tame, it's to awaken. Stand tall in the nocturnal wilderness inside every relationship. Strip the story bare. Speak with ferocity. Love with your entire nervous system exposed. Trust the primal intelligence driving you both. Let her be wild, let yourself be truthful, let the marriage evolve beyond cliché and compromise. This is not the ending, this is a beginning. The old instincts are not your enemy, they are your source.